in whatever way, shape, or form those end up taking, really trying to give them the tools that they need to make informed decisions and best meet their residents' needs. So the broadband labels are certainly one of those tools in the tool belt. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Then Dave.
I'm Dave Sevick, Executive Director, Computer Reach in Pittsburgh. I'm here representing Digital Navigators.
Awesome. Thanks, Dave. And so we'll get into it now. So about NDIA, we recently crossed the 1,800 plus affiliate mark. So go us. We advance digital equity by supporting community programs and equipping policymakers to act. So like I said, that 1,800 plus mark we recently crossed with our affiliates in all 50 states, plus DC, American Samoa, and territories, and over 30 tribal entities. So why digital equity and not digital equality? Equality is giving everybody the same thing. Equity is giving them the things that they need to access the world and the services that they need and want. So digital equity, it's the condition in which all individuals and communities have the IT capacity needed for full participation in our society, democracy, and economy. Digital inclusion being the activities necessary to ensure that they have those, that all individuals and communities, including the most disadvantaged, have access to the use of information and communication technologies. We like to say here that digital divide is the issue, digital inclusion is the work to get there, and digital equity is the goal. And here you can kind of see the roadmap to digital equity. The elements of digital inclusion include affordable and appropriate devices, ongoing technical support for those devices so people know how to use them and know how to use them safely, access to affordable high-speed internet, and access to digital skills trainings. And so now we can start getting into the labels themselves. So just a little bit of background. They were mandated by the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act of 2021, also known as IIJA. Congress mandated to the FCC to require the broadband consumer labels so that there was more transparency with consumers for what plans we're offering, what speeds, and what price those would be. And so what are they? They're exactly what they sound like. They are nutrition labels for internet plans based off the USDA nutrition labels that you can see on the side of any food product, etc. Their goal, like I said, was to increase transparency, and there were a few posting requirements. Providers with over 100,000 subscribers were required to have these labels by April 10th of this past year, so April 10th, 2024. Now, smaller providers with less than 100,000 subscribers aren't required to have them until October 10th of this year. And with that, I'll pass it off to Ryan.
That's going to get old really quickly, isn't it? But hey again, everyone. For a bit of the breakdown on the broadband labels, they really are supposed to be in things like in a plain language for your average person to be able to understand. So at the top of the label, you're supposed to be getting who you're buying service from, what exactly they are calling the service you were buying. So whether that's something like their, quote unquote fast tier, or whether they're calling it like the advanced plan or something like that, whatever kind of term of art name that the provider has given that particular plan is what they're supposed to label there. And then they're supposed to give you what technology that is after. So whether or not that is a fiber connection, a mobile connection, however the service is getting to your home, they need to tell you that up at the top. Moving down the label a little bit, we start to get into the meat and potatoes of what these labels are supposed to be about. In big bold letters, they're supposed to give you the monthly cost, and this is not the monthly with everything added in. This is specifically what you're paying for the service itself. The things that kind of come in the box under that are whether or not that's an introductory rate. If it is, then you'll see kind of the rest of these things. If there's no introductory rate, or there's no kind of promotional rate associated with the plan that you're looking at, you won't see a lot of these things because they aren't required to tell you them unless it's an introductory rate or a promotional price. And you'll get things like straight up yes or no, whether it's promotional or introductory, how long that promotion lasts, so whether it's a year, 2 years, what have you, and then what that price increase will be after that contract ends, or that promotional period ends. And then they are required to give you a link to the kind of the terms and conditions that are associated with that as well. After we get through the plan specific pricing, we then get into kind of the more local, I guess, like the local charges, the things that you are going to be looking at monthly for equipment, things that you're going to be looking at for state fees. The universal service fee will be something that's on there, and then other fees like installation charges, or the things that they will put on your first bill, but that you probably won't see again. One of the things that you are supposed to see is whether or not there will be a state and local tax line, and they will tell you that those fees will be included in your final price, but they are not required to actually tell you what those state and local taxes actually are, which is a little problematic, because now we've started to kind of leave off fees that folks are going to have to pay, and the number that you see on the label may be slightly different than the number that you pay, which is problematic. One of the other sections that's included here is a discount or a bundled section. They are required to kind of give you you can look at all of the bundles that we offer, like a link to all of those bundles. But one of the things that they are not required to do is that if you are purchasing a bundled service, so if you're getting like voice, internet, and cable, they do not have to break out your internet service into its own label. They're not required to give that to you. Maybe that's something that we'll see in the future, but as of right now, it's not. And then other things that they will include kind of in this intermediary section will be what types of discounts are applied. Are you getting like a veteran's benefit? Are you, when it was available, receiving an ACP benefit? Those kinds of things. Stuff that may not be applicable to everyone, but if it is applicable to you, it should be on your specific broadband nutrition label after you purchase service. Before, they won't have it listed. After, it should be. Then we get into the kind of the technical specification sections. We see things like typical download and upload speeds. And I want to be very, very clear here. Typical does not mean average. Typical is a fairly antiquated idea that came from an FCC order back in 2011 that allowed a provider to sort of take a range of what their speeds would be and say, our typical speeds will fall within these ranges. And usually what providers will do is they'll kind of take like the middle of that and say, this is what our typical speed would be for the purposes of this label. We don't have averages here. We don't have actual received speeds. We don't have received latencies. So while you're getting kind of a general idea of what service you'll receive, you're not actually going to see on this label the things that you're actually going to get at the end of the day when you run your speed tests at home. Other things that are included in these technical services areas are things like what your data cap is, how much data you get, what your fee is if you go over that, and then they are required to provide you a link to, again, those terms that specifically state in your contract where that's coming from. And then we get into a lot more of the links. We have things like how they manage their networks. So whether or not there may be certain practices like throttling, depending on necessity for network management, what their privacy policies are, who you can call for customer support. And there's supposed to be a link to not just the FCC's website, but also to the specific place that you can go on the provider's website to be able to get back to this label if you're not viewing it specifically through like your provider's portal or something like that, through your account at that provider. And then I will pass it over to Dave. This one.
Thank you, Ryan and Ryan. I guess I was asked to come here because I'm a digital navigator on the ground here in Pittsburgh, both in Pittsburgh, which is very urban, and then all of the rural counties around Pittsburgh. So we do a lot of work there. A lot of people were disappointed when ACP ended, and we're doing a lot of counseling on what's next now that they've lost their $30 subsidy. And it's hard to give people advice and direction. And I have not used these labels yet. I just learned a lot in the last half hour by talking to both Ryans. I don't see them as being very helpful, to be honest, right now, based on what you've reported, because it's not accurate. We don't know if it's up to date. So I'm not ready to deploy these yet. And just really quickly, I tried to find Verizon, Comcast, and T-Mobile just 10 minutes before this conference started, and I couldn't find them easily. I found them, one I found on Chris Mitchell's site for the, and I had to dig for that. And the other one I Googled, and I had a hard time finding them quickly. And then when I finally did go to Broadband Now, which is an excellent website, by the way, it didn't give me the broadband label right away. I had to click in as if I was going to buy a plan before it revealed what the cost was. And I think that's really unacceptable. If you were to go to a supermarket and you wanted to know how much protein was in all these different things, you should just be able to look at the label without buying it first or taking it to the counter. That's my opinion on the street. So I don't find these labels to be helpful right now. Definitely headed in the right direction. But just a quick look, I didn't find it to be very helpful. Next slide. I compare plans all the time. I do use Broadband Now, and I use all of the information I had through the ACP exercises with all the residents here in Pittsburgh and the surrounding community. So I still use that. I have an 800 number to most providers, and especially Comcast and T-Mobile have provided me a direct person I can call for questions to be answered. And that's a really valuable resource for any digital navigator. Try to get a relationship with someone at your local provider or nationally that'll give you a backdoor to getting some information. So again, I'm endorsing, full disclosure, T-Mobile and Comcast as great providers. So I've not had much luck with Verizon in Pittsburgh. Those are the three big providers. So I do compare plans all the time when we're advising people on the options. In full disclosure, also, we now have begun distributing T-Mobile devices to folks through the T-Mobile for Government plan for $35. So, we're a government agent for T-Mobile right now, but we're not exclusive to them. So what best fits people's needs? It depends on where they live. If they're going to get a Wi-Fi enabled device, a Wi-Fi enabled gateway, and also depends on how much they want to pay, how much they're able to pay. And the worst thing about all of this for anybody that's a new digital navigator is trying to get someone to break their bundle. I feel that's just really confusing to most people. I know with Comcast and Verizon, if you break a bundle, they tell you you lose your discounts. They try to coerce you into staying with them and keeping the bundle. So bundling is a real hassle. So review your current plan, talk to your provider, try to counsel your users honestly, and let them know what's available out there. And did you want me to do the next slide too? Benefits of the labels, Ryan? Increased consumer label understanding, yes. Your plan comparison, potential for lower prices. I can tell you in the Pittsburgh area, the prices have been going down a lot. T-Mobile was big in this area now, and I just noticed that Comcast dropped their price the other day. So day to day, I don't know what the latest deal is or what the conditions of that deal might be. And I usually do that on a case-by-case basis with every user that we're counseling. So that's my unscripted, honest opinion from the street here in Western Pennsylvania. I'm not sure if it differs for you across the country, but that's how we advise people. Let's do a little shopping together. And our digital navigators will hop on the phone with our users to help them understand what the plans are, what bundling is, et cetera, et cetera. And I guess I'll take questions later if anybody has any. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
You did want me to talk about the FCC Consumer Complaint Center. One of the best things about the FCC outreach grant was the FCC Consumer Complaint Center. Awesome place for you to give some feedback to the FCC about a provider that's misbehaving or not communicating honestly. They answer every complaint. So during the whole ACP project, I used this site a lot. And I would tell ISPs, you need to give me an honest answer and help me here. I'm going to have to report you to the FCC. And that really worked. And I think it still does, because providers don't want to be reported to the principal. So again, the link to the FCC Consumer Complaint Center is excellent. It's not just for broadband. There's other things you can complain about too on that site the last time I checked. And I believe those are the slides that I'm responsible for right now.
Yes, and just so everybody knows, you can also email FCC staff directly specifically about these labels if you have complaints. And so there we have Alejandro Rourke, Miriam Montgomery, and Zach Champ. They all work pretty closely with these labels. And if you're able to get a hold of them and let them know what's going on, like a large provider doesn't have the label that they should have up, or when smaller providers are required to put them up coming in October, and if they have not put those up yet, you can also email them directly, as well as going to the FCC Consumer Complaint Center. And then just one more quick slide before we get into a Q&A here really quick. We recently launched our Grading Internet for Good. So NDIA, we began scoring internet plans through our Grading Internet for Good, also known as Gig page. The reason I bring it up is some of the criteria for grading that we included was price, speed, reliability, but pertaining to this, also accessibility to their consumer labels. How quickly could you get them? Were you required to put information in before being able to see the label? Did you have to click through multiple pages, or was it up front and center? And so you can go to our Grading Internet for Good page and view the plans that we have rated there already. And we continue to work on grading more plans as time goes by. And with that, I'm just going to plug joining the NDIA community. If you aren't already an affiliate or a friend or an affiliate plus of the organization, you can scan the QR code there. Being an affiliate is completely free, and it gets you access to our listserv, which has a bunch of free resources, research, and tools. People are asking questions on there all the time, sharing information. It's wonderful. We also have our monthly community calls for our affiliates, as well as our monthly newsletter. And with that, we can get into a Q&A. If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat, or you can send them to me afterwards or chime in and just unmute your mic and ask the question.
Before we get started on the Q&A, thank you to all three of you for being here. I just want to quickly go back to the complaint center. We'd recommend that if you need to file a complaint, all complaints are filed with the complaint center, not and then if you would like to, in addition, email one of these FCC staff to do so. But the complaint center, in order for the FCC to pursue any sort of investigation or anything, they need those complaints documented in that complaint center. So it shouldn't be an either or, it should be a both and. So complaint center and staff. If you're only going to do either or, then only complaint center. Just want to make sure that's super clear.
Yes. Make sure to go through that official channel first, and then for backup, you can also send the information to the FCC directly afterward. With that, does anybody have any questions?
Can I just make mention of, can I make mention of one thing real quick?
Of course you can.
Yeah. One of the biggest things, I think one of the biggest detriments that we're seeing right now, as we're still kind of in this implementation phase, is that I think it's twofold. One, we're still waiting on machine readable labels. So like labels that folks can really get in, do the data aggregation on, and help kind of explore the actual services that are out there for folks and put them side by side without doing a lot of the point of sale shenanigans that folks seem to need to do right now. we're waiting on that. But one of the biggest issues that we're seeing with that is that there's no standard machine readable format by which providers have to put their labels out. We are kind of in the process of seeing a lot of people take a lot of different tacts with that. And I think as we're moving towards October, we're going to see a lot of folks having a lot more difficulty actually doing some of the serious like back-end data aggregation that's going to be necessary to make these labels really useful. And then the second piece of this is at that point of sale, whether you are online in a brick and mortar store, wherever you happen to be looking at this label at, if you are a person who is differently abled, that needs something like a braille label or an audio label, if you're online or something like that, those things, while required, are not often actually advertised by the providers that have them. They are supposed to be available upon request, but right now it doesn't appear as though any providers are actually saying like, no, we have these and here is the dedicated place that you can go and find them. So that's just another little thing that if folks are looking at doing some advocacy for kind of making these things more useful, I think appending that to any advocacy that is done is going to be critical.
Thank you.
Can I ask both Ryans, is there a date that the label was updated on there? Almost like when you have a document, the last time someone brought it up to date, so I wouldn't have to wonder whether I can trust that label. Because as I said, the prices are changing daily now. So when was that label created and by whom? Is that on the label when it was updated?
So it's not. It is usually what it will be the price of that plan when that plan was created, if that plan was created after October of 2022. If those things are updated, the provider is supposed to be updating them because you are supposed to be seeing in real time what you are actually paying for. But what the lag between those price changes are and the updates to the label is not recorded anywhere. That's not submitted to anybody. There's no oversight on that particular piece of it. So yeah, there totally could be some lag between a provider updating their prices and it being reflected in the label, even though there shouldn't be.
We have a question here in the chat for us. So what are some good practices for raising awareness about the labels within communities, specifically for those on the ground serving community members? For example, are libraries a good place to raise awareness about labels? I can answer that. Yes, libraries would be a really good place to raise awareness for those labels, especially because people will be coming into libraries to search for maybe internet plans at a new home. Other great places would be like community centers, etc. The FCC has information about the labels that can be printed out and shared with community members.
And I will certainly say from the perspective of actually socializing this idea, it is something that like the folks in like the DC sphere have been talking about since like 2016. But now that is actually something that's out there, there's not a whole lot of folks that read FCC orders is what I'm coming to realize. And those folks are the ones that need these things. So the more that we can say, hey, here's a transparency tool that will give you an idea of what you're about to receive, because I don't want to say that these labels are perfect, because they are far from it, but they are a really good starting point to kind of gauge, this is what's available in my area. These are the kinds of things that I can receive where I am located. And that, I think, making sure that we are at least socializing those things is going to be incredibly important.
And Amy shared there in the chat the mock FCC label that the FCC shared back in March, April-ish, when they were first coming out, so that people could see them and what they needed to look like. Are there any other questions? And yes, there's also the mobile version, so you can see for the mobile users. So we have another question. Is there anything missing on the labels that consumers are now asking about? that digital inclusion and digital inclusion programs and digital navigators need to be prepared for?
Hey guys, it's Sherry. I'll jump in just to say that we have noticed some of the low cost plans from providers in our local areas are not yet listed on labels at all. So maybe just refer back to another search like everyone on .org or something of that sort to make sure all of your options are covered when you're advising a resident.
So to that point, very specifically, if those low cost plans were created before October of 2022, you won't see a label. They were not required to create one for it. So a lot of things like Internet Essentials, while they might put one out, I haven't looked at whether Comcast has done that or not. But because that plan as it is currently iterated originated before October of 2022, they would not be required to put out a label for that. So that was kind of one of the compromises the FCC made, said we're not going to make this retroactive to before the order comes out, which a lot of people are still paying for plans they got well before 2022. And so a lot of folks are not going to receive labels, even though they absolutely should.
And it is also important to note, especially with those small local providers, they aren't required to have those labels out until October. And so keep an eye out on October 10th for those labels from those providers to come out. And as to things that are currently missing on the labels that people should be prepared to answer questions about, a big one is just reliability. They don't have any information about reliability currently on the labels, and that's a big question that people are always asking about the internet plans, especially for those wireless plans where like reliability is heavily dependent on like weather and like if you have line of sight to the tower, etc. And Ryan, just for your information, Angela did share, and I was going to share this too. Comcast does have a label for their Internet Essentials plan.
That's good. I hadn't looked, and I just picked the first low cost plan I could think of. So, but other things that we'd like to see on the labels, and I will say before all of that, we're hoping for these labels that they are an iterative process, kind of continually talking to the FCC, saying like, hey, these are things that you need to be looking at yearly, at the very least, to say what information folks need to make informed choices. That's not currently something that they have been really thinking about. So continually pestering them about that has been a personal mission of mine. But one of the things that the providers were very adamant about keeping off the label was that actual, like, this is what your average received speed or average latency will be, or like actual pieces of information that folks can use to make good informed choices, because you can take an ethereal average that a provider has measured or like take their maximum advertised and understand that I'll get near-ish to that, or maybe depending. That coupled with the reliability issue is you could be seeing speeds that are way less than that. And there are folks that are running into those issues that we've talked to across the country. So having actual good, measured received speeds, received latencies, things that can just tell you what types of services that the plan that you're actually looking at is good for. And I think that's something that came up in discussions back in 2022 was, should we be listing on these plans the types of services or the types of activities of which you can use them? So like gaming, video conferencing, things like that. Should those be included on the label to give folks a really clear picture of what they're purchasing? And I certainly think, yes, that's something that we need, but it's something that's not on the label yet.
Thank you. And then Derek dropped a question there in the chat and said, there seemed to be some chafing from providers and industry associations about transparency requirements from the federal government because of the varying costs from region to region, state to state, and from month to month. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on the validity of this?
So from my perspective, I think these arguments are I'd say a little specious at best, because this is what is on the label is information that these providers already have access to. They know how much it costs to provide service to a particular person in a particular area. It is just about doing the work to put that on a piece of paper and send it to the person who's getting it. And I think that part there is actively saying, like, this is how much these things cost. This is, how much it costs to wear in a particular area, are things that they don't necessarily want to be putting out very publicly. So that's kind of, all of this stuff is information they have. Why they're balking at actively saying, like, hey, look, we are willing to work with folks to put out this useful information, when they could be buying some goodwill with that is beyond me.
And that's where I was coming from on it as well. Like, providers have all of this information. They are just kind of pushing back on the exact level of detail that they're going to be providing. You're welcome. Any other questions from the chat or anybody in the group that wants to ask any final questions? Well, seeing none, I will give you guys some time back. Thank you all so much for coming today for our Broadband Consumer Labels webinar. We will be sending the recording out shortly after the webinar is over, as well as a copy of the slides. If you guys have any questions, feel free to shoot an email to myself, to Ryan, to Dave, anybody that's in the slides there. Our emails are in the slides, and we'll also be going out with that email with all the information afterwards. So thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Take care, everybody.